Hey, Simplifiers, I'm Evan, and if you've ever experienced a bottleneck in your business or company, today's conversation is for you. I'm sitting down with John Wijtenburg, a Florida-based entrepreneur who went from economics degrees and working at Fannie Mae to building a 30-person overseas team that ran hotel operations during the pandemic. What makes John's story remarkable is how he's taken frameworks from Silicon Valley thinkers and really distilled them into practical operating systems for commercial real estate. John believes culture isn't what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And growth isn't about hustling harder, it's about crafting better systems. He's built his consulting practice around Naval's 4 C's of leverage: capital, collaboration, code, and content, showing operators how to delegate decisions instead of just tasks. Today, you're going to learn about 12-week execution sprints, wildly important goals that get entire teams engaged, and why constraints actually unlock creativity. We'll explore how to create friction for bad behaviors and incentives for good ones. Plus, John's 3 core values that any team can remember: honesty, discipline, and creativity. So whether you're stuck in making every decision in your business or looking to scale without losing your mind, John's frameworks offer a clear path forward. Let's go. How's it going down in Florida, man?
Getting warm, man. We're past the winter for sure.
Exactly. Doing so good. Yeah, I love. You said you're out kind of near Fort Lauderdale. I've got like honeymoon memories, going out there. There's so many good things to do.
Yeah.
Well, how long have you been in Florida? Just curious.
So I grew up in Florida. I was born in South Africa. Came here when I was only 2 years old, and then grew up here. Went to Florida State, and then lived in DC for about 5 years, and then came back.
And came back home to Florida.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome, man. So a little bit before we started hitting record, we were talking just about how the market's changing and about how, what's going on with hotels, what's going on with different funds, what's going on with, operating systems that, can really break through in a way that, some people recruit this way. So I'm really excited about this conversation. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about kind of how you, like we were talking about books earlier, you're like, you take an idea from this book, you take an idea from that book, and you kind of form, the way you do things. And so I'd love for you just to share, how did you kind of come up with your own, operating system and how you got into business, that kind of stuff. Just go for it, John.
Sure. So it really started when I was like a teenager. I've always been really into business, and I was coming up around the time of the dot-com boom. And so, always looking around and seeing what people are doing. I was into tech and all those things. And then went to college, got a degree in economics and a master's in economics. And then along the way, was an economist at Fannie Mae and moved back to Florida, wanted to get into commercial real estate. So I became a broker. Right. And then I was recruited to get into the hotel business by a local developer here, where I did acquisitions, asset management, capital markets. But eventually I got the opportunity to work on business strategy at this group. And it was like an awesome, we were vertically integrated. We had construction, operations, branding, investments, everything in-house. And it was such a great opportunity to look at structures and institutional design and all of these things. So I was exposed to OKRs, 40X, EOS, scaling up, all the different platforms at that time. And then when everything collapsed in 2020 on the hotel side, I rolled off and joined a buddy to build a portfolio of extended stay economy scale hotels. And there it was like a total mind-blowing, eye-opening experience, because I really got deep into the operations. It was just really the two of us leading this team. And we got to the point where we were executing all of the different tools, but we realized, and I realized that as long as all the decisions are running through, one or two people, like you're never going to grow. You become your
Right.
ceiling, right?
Right. You're bottlenecked.
Exactly. And so we started to build a team overseas, actually. We built it to 30 people overseas.
Awesome.
It was like very low skills work, like, customer service and that kind of thing. But then also we had higher skill, like recruiting and HR and comp and ben. And we had, you name it. I even had an analyst out there. And so basically anything that didn't have to be on the ground in the US, we were able to ship overseas.
Right.
And it was such a great experience because I was able to automate and simplify everything to the point where I could take a step back and, decide this isn't for me. I'm going to go into consulting. And so then I started to build out my consulting practice.
Right. So that, there's a lot you could go into about that, but I mean, just what are some of those things, those essentials that you're like, man, lesson learned, like I don't want to repeat that, or like, man, I've got to do this if someone else was looking to, work with people from overseas.
Yeah. So I love to look at Silicon Valley for inspiration. I mean, there's so
Hmm.
many great thinkers out there. And so, I look at Ben Horowitz and Naval Ravikant and others like that. And so when I was following Naval's stuff, I came across his 4 C's of leverage. So you have capital, which is one that everybody in real estate focuses on like 90% of their attention, right?
Right.
So, but you have capital, you have collaboration, which is people, you have code, which are your systems, and then you have content, which is what kind of binds it all together and helps you really scale and grow.
I love it. Yes.
And so when I was looking at this framework, I thought, wow, that's really great. And then Ben Horowitz came out with a book maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, called Culture is as Code. I think that's what the name what was.
Okay.
But basically, he came with the concept that, your culture is what drives everything. And
Hmm.
this just blew my mind. And I realized that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. But more
Right.
importantly, culture is formed by what you tolerate, not what you preach, right? So all
Hmm.
the writing on the wall, all the emails that you send out, everything is worthless if you accept, the misbehavior by a top sales professional, or
Sure.
you accept a leader who's not fully engaged in a meeting. And so seeing that, I
Mm.
realized like we have to have the key is one, having a clear vision, two, having an execution cadence, and
Hmm.
then three, you have to have a process for creating and improving your processes. And so those are the three things that I built around the commercial real estate growth operating system, which is kind of a combination of all the wonderful things I've read over the years.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, like, what would be those, you know, those values? I mean, those things that you're like, hey, we are gonna put them on the wall, but there's also gonna be accountability with them. So,
Right.
like, what are some of those aspects that you want to hire for culture, and then you teach the skills, right? Is that kind of how you're doing
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. And this is something that I think a lot of people get wrong when it comes to culture. They think hiring for culture is about culture fit. And while that's okay, what you end up with is a very homogenous environment, right? You end up
Hmm.
with like people who all kind of think the same, right?
Right.
Because they fit into the culture. But the
Okay.
reality is what you have to think more about is what's the long-term vision. You have like these different horizons. You have your 10-year horizon, which is, where do you want to go? This is your founder horizon because very
Hmm.
few people are going to stick with you for that entire 10 years, right? So this is
Right.
like, who do I want to be? What do I want my company to look like? All of those different things. The
Yeah.
next is your 3-year horizon, and that's more of your mission world, right? So these are
Hmm.
the people who can, bring you from point A to point B, which is the next stepping stone towards your 10-year. And then you
Right.
have your execution horizon, which is the 1 year, right? So,
Mhm.
and within that, you operate in your execution sprints and your execution,
Mhm.
cycles. So doing all those things, you kind of have like, now you have something to work backwards from. How do I back into the goal? And, one of the things that Tony Robbins says that always sticks with me is we always overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, but vastly underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. And so the idea is like working back from that 10 to get to what you do today.
That's so big. I mean, when you do these like vision workshops, I mean, what are the light bulb moments? What are you live for those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's like we were talking about before, when everything runs through the founder or a small group, a small partnership, when all the major decisions go through you, you become the bottleneck, right? You become the ceiling to growth on your business. And so the key to growth is not necessarily delegating tasks, but building a team and a culture and an environment where you can delegate decisions.
Right.
When we're in this situation, we do this, right? Mm-hmm. And you create the environment of kind of principles over assignments, right? And when people like understand the purpose, they understand the vision, they understand the principles from which to operate, they're more likely to make the decision that's aligned with what you would make. But also, they feel empowered and engaged to do the things that are maybe a little bit risky, but they'll move the needle.
Right. And like, I mean, even one of your operating philosophies is vision without structure creates chaos. And that structure is actually, this is how you think critically in these different situations.
Right.
Because and otherwise they go, oh, I'm accomplishing the thing and I check it off on, whatever PM tool that you're using. And you're like, hold on a second. I gotta teach you how to think.
Right.
How to be able to approach things. Right. That's the kind of structure that you need.
It's such a great point. And the reality is most people are so inundated with content from all over in their lives, right? I mean, like right now, attention is currency. And so everybody is trying to get your attention. And so it's the same in business right now. I mean, a lot of leaders discount how important feedback loops and communication is because they think it's fluffy, they think it's a waste of time and all of these things. But it's so important to capture that attention and then repeat yourself as much as possible because they're not going to get it on the first email. They're not going to get it on the second email. It's going to take multiple iterations before you get to the point where you're fully aligned.
But John, we sent them a handbook.
So true. So
yeah,
true.
but you need those different touch points. So like what are some of those things that you do to build trust, to, have the transparency and the alignment and you share those wins? What's that like?
I think the most important thing, so in my business, in LXK Group, we have 3 values and we keep it to 3 because 3 is memorable. Past 3, people forget it. They can't, nobody understands where you go from there. But we have 3 values. 1 is honesty. 2 is discipline, and 3 is creativity. So these 3 combine in so many wonderful ways to make, integrity and all the other things that we put as, values in broader sense. But the key is to create a cadence around this and schedule it. Because the problem that we run into in many cases is that we have so many great intentions, but we don't put it on the calendar, and then they just get forgotten, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the simplest thing in the world. As soon as
the gym has to be in your calendar.
Exactly, right. If you don't design your life for it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so, great example of this. If you intend to have a 2-week check-in with each new hire, you got to put it on your calendar. And in many cases, you have these situations where it's, all right, it's important for us to have a 2-week check-in, a 30-day check-in, and then a 6-month check-in, right? And we have these great best laid plans, but then you don't put it on the calendar and it gets back. I mean, you never know when that person joined. Like how are you supposed to keep track of all these things? And so it's like the simplest things, but it's so critical and it makes such a big difference. And that goes with everything within the operating cadence. So we work in sprints and big goal cycles, right? And we believe that 12 weeks is enough to get what a lot of people get done in 12 months, as long as you're focused, right? So we have this focused, kind of like a WIG, right? A wildly important goal for the quarter. And then we work in 2-week sprints to get there. So we set the roadmap based on the vision. We set the backlog based on the goal. And then we have the sprint backlog based on where we're operating in that particular moment. And so when you schedule it and you have your daily meetings, your sprint planning, your sprint retrospective, you start to like build a culture of learning and engagement and development that builds alignment with the team in ways that you can't do when you're just winging it.
Right. And then you can celebrate, like you're saying, in those retrospective meetings, and, however you're being able to show, okay, what did you do this last week in this, context, or what is a win for you? And it gives people that opportunity to say, I said I was going to do this and I did this. Here's the result, and everyone's like, okay, that's the transparency aspect. We're all aligned. We're all going in the same direction.
Absolutely. And having that scorecard and knowing when you're winning is so critical. So many people just, again, they let it go and they don't celebrate because it's not, it feels like normal business as usual. And it feels good to win. And players like to win. So, you got to give them, the win.
Right. Yeah. So do you come up with those 12-week, goals? Do you come alongside? Do you help kind of in your vision workshops, kind of break things down a little bit easier and then go, okay, for the next 12 weeks, we said we want to go here, but we got to do this first. How do you do it?
Yeah. So what we do in the vision workshops, it's a 2-day workshop where we kind of set when we roll out the system, right? We get everybody on board. Everybody understands the importance of all these things. They understand the way the cadence works and operates. And this becomes the hardware of your operation, right? It's the way that you move and the way that you operate within the system. We set those collaboratively because every business is different, and even if it's a similar operation to say another multifamily operator or syndicator or another hotel syndicator, you have different personalities, you have different goals, you have different investment timelines, different investor types, and so the needs change all the time, right?
So many variables.
Exactly. And you have to be really agile. And so we pretty much sell frameworks rather than like solutions, because the framework helps you develop the solution regardless of the season.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And then what about for when you're recruiting overseas? Like, I know you're not typically just working with VAs or assistants, but you're trying to hit that kind of mid to high end of the market. So like, do you kind of have that 2-day vision workshop for just executives? And then it's like, okay, now we're going to roll this out in this, department. And as you add in people, like how are the new hires coming in and going, okay, this is the process. Like, what's it like?
So, well, here's where the wildly important goals become so cool, because the point of the goal is not to prescribe the way work needs to be done. The point of the goal is to set the outcome, right? And then set the constraints to achieve the outcome. And so what that enables is when it's clearly defined and people really understand it, then they will apply their creativity to make it happen. And so a great example of this is when I first rolled out the wigs, we said we wanted to increase revenue, but revenue is such a hard thing to influence directly. Like I can't go onto the street and say, hey, you come into my hotel and pay money to stay in my room, right? But but we can influence it in other ways. And so we looked at what our challenges were. And in many cases, it was guest service and it was cleanliness and maintenance. And so how do we influence guest service and cleanliness and maintenance so that everybody can get engaged? And we kind of did a solution design exercise where we finally ended up on what's the root cause here, or so we identified that root cause, and then what is the solution? And it turned out that if we focus on improving our guest service scores, our across Expedia, Booking, Google, etc., then it'll move the needle for everything else. Revenue will come in, but more importantly, is everybody in the business has an ability to affect the guest service score. Right. And so now the maintenance person is saying, oh, I got to make sure that this is handled the right way because guest service. The front desk person is saying, I got to make sure that this person has a great stay, guest service. The accounting people say, I got to make sure that, I got to spot where the problems are because I need to ensure that guest service is able to do this. And so everybody in the organization gets engaged, and you start moving the needle towards a single number, a clear scoreboard that tells you where you are as a team as well as an individual.
That's huge. Yeah. I know the restrictions actually create the boundaries. They create the structure for creativity.
Exactly.
And, I can think of so many different examples of going, okay, guys, we want to go out and do this. And this is the time constraint. This is, these are the different, elements that, we may not have this resource or we may not have this expertise. So I remember one time saying, hey, we're going to build this huge fund. And I was like, we're not experts in this fund. But legitimately, that caused us to go, okay, the core audience thinks like this and in this framework. And it was like, okay, I mean, it's so great. Like the visionary came in and was like, all right, here we go. This is what we're doing. And was just like letting the team go, how do we get there? How do we do it?
Right.
And I just remember thinking like, well, we create a masterclass with the partner. And we make all the analogies and we connect the dots from a typical real estate, investor into oil and gas in this case. And, there's things like that. Like I can think of another example of like someone really wanting to write a book, right? And they're like, I've got all these ideas and I want to, help other people catch on to these ideas. And it's challenging to get an email approved or, but what I found is helping people if it's verbalized and if it's said in a webinar, in an interview, then we can be able to use it.
Right.
Like, how do we kind of combine those things? And so in each of those two examples, like that oil and gas masterclass ended up being the main funnel and ended up being the most successful fund that had been done.
So crazy. That's so cool.
And by building out the book that I was telling you about, all the investors knew the philosophy.
Right.
Those were actually two separate kind of different projects, but it took the same thing to where people, they understood what was to come.
Right.
And then it affected the videos and it affected the emails and it affected, but it was all taken because it was spoken and it was taking a different approach based off of the constraints that we had.
That's so cool. Well, and that's what's most important is the unbounded creativity goes nowhere, right? I mean, there's no direction, but if you have the constraints, you can fit something in there, right? Now you have a box to put it in, right? Otherwise you just have an ocean that you're going to drop all this, these ideas into.
Well, and that's honestly like what you're talking about. And it's like content ends up being that packaging and those constraints.
Right.
You need those things to be able to go, okay, in order to get the capital, we need to be able to sell this idea with these people, and the ideas are the code,
Right.
right?
Well, and this is where I think the best leaders do really well, because they don't try to create all of the content on their own, right? They
Mm-hmm.
crowdsource this content, right? And so I think back to like Steve Wynn, for example, used to have an all hands call every week. So everybody from the bell person to the CEO was on this call, and they could share wins, right?
Right.
And so there's this great story from this experience where um, there was a bellman came on, and he said, we welcomed one of our regular guests, and as they were coming in, the wife said, "Oh my gosh, I forgot my pills." Right.
Oh.
And so she lives in Barstow, or she lives in LA. He's in Vegas. But the bellman's like, "You know what? I got this." He calls his brother who lives in Barstow. He says, "I have a guest. I need you. I need you to go to her house, get her pills, and bring them to the hotel."
Right.
And then by the end of the day, she'd all checked in. She's enjoying her day, all of the things. His brother shows up and, delivers the thing. And I was like, wow, I mean, it's terribly inefficient for sure, but it emphasizes what are our values. Our values are treating the guest at the highest level possible, right? This is a regular guest, a loyal guest. We want them to spend money. We want them to have a good time. We want them all of the things. So how do we do that? And by crowdsourcing those stories and making it so that everybody can hear them, that's how you deliver your values. That's how you reinforce your values and reinforce your culture. Because, as we said, culture is not what you preach, it's what you tolerate, and what you do on a daily basis when nobody's looking and when everybody's looking.
That's huge. And then everyone's going, "Oh, this is celebrated."
Right. Exactly.
I could tell a story the next time, you know.
And they're looking
They're
for it.
inspired.
Yeah.
Right. Looking for the opportunities.
Right. It's like asking your kids what they're grateful for at the dinner table or
Right.
before bed. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, now I'm going to be looking for things to be grateful for. After a couple weeks, they're much more grateful. Yeah.
That's so true. You said growth is a craft, not a hustle. That's a little controversial for today's hustle culture. How did
Yeah.
you get there? And
I mean,
how did you kind of come to that and go, you know what? Line in the sand.
Yeah, I don't think that hustle is bad. I think hustle is important. I think the way that we apply hustle is often bad because it's often tied to blind ambition. Because you hear a lot of the people talk about hustle and talk about hard work, and in the same breath, they tell you that passion is not important, just go make money. And for me, I think passion is essential. Because if you are in a business that you don't like, it'll kill you. Like it literally will kill you. Like their cortisol levels will rise, your heart rate will race, all of these things. And it's just not worth it. And so I'm not putting down working hard. Working hard is important. It's essential. Working long hours is essential. You don't know how to work smart until you've put in the time to work hard, right? What I'm saying, though, is you got to be working on your craft as much as you're working on the sales or the service delivery or whatever it is. And so in that sense, you have to learn how to develop processes, how to design businesses. You have to learn how to recruit the best people and look for the right character traits in those people. You have to put in the time to become a great leader if you want to become a great leader. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens through repetition, exposure, and study.
That's huge. And, for everyone to be able to say, hey, this is my craft. This is what I'm aiming for. This is what I'm trying to make the best version of this specialized niche, the thing that you don't want everybody doing everything.
Right.
You want for people to go, yeah, I mean, there's a place for cross training and there's a place for filling in the needs, when someone goes on paternity leave or they go on, they're out of town and someone can step in. But as far as a craft goes, like you want to be able to go, you know, I'm a craftsman in this area. It could be sales, it could be service, it could be the way that you're structuring due diligence spreadsheets. I mean, whatever
Right.
the case may be, right?
Right. Absolutely.
How do you take a group? And I'm just throwing this at you. We've not even really talked about this, but how do you take a group that's used to another process and then you go, hey, this is how we're doing things moving forward?
Yeah, so this is a big challenge, and I think it's the same challenge that you see in software adoption,
Hmm.
new tools, things like that. So when you roll out a new piece of software, call it maybe it's a property management system or an accounting
Sure.
system or whatever it is, um, training and user adoption is so difficult.
Hmm.
The easy thing there is you have no other choice, right? So it's like,
Right.
here's the Yardi system, figure it out, right? Like you got to make it work because we
Yeah.
decided on it, right? But
We paid
in
for it. We're using it. Yeah.
right, like we made the decision, we went through the process, all the things. But when it comes to human workflows, it's not that simple, right? It's
Right.
I can't just say, hey, look, we got Smartsheet or Trello or ClickUp or whatever, and now this is what we're
Yeah.
using, right? Because it doesn't work like that. And what happens in many cases is you get the system, you spend a lot of time implementing it, training people how to use it, explaining
Hmm.
why it's important. And then you get to the first meeting and it's like, oh yeah, no, I was busy. I forgot to fill in the details on that thing. Or oh yeah, no, we had a fire that we had to put out, right? It's
Sure.
like, and this is where tolerance is key, and where if there are, there's two ways to install culture. One is, you have to first set the vision and then you have to, create the enforcement mechanism. And the
Hmm.
enforcement comes in two forms. One is friction and the other is incentives, right?
Right.
So
Right.
when you put friction, it slows things down. And when you
Hmm.
add incentives, it speeds things up, right? So if you can eliminate friction, you're more likely to get adoption. And if you can add incentives, you're more likely to get adoption.
Sure.
It works the opposite way too, right? If you add friction, you reduce the bads. And if you
Right.
add punishments, you reduce the behavior that you don't want to see. And
Sure.
so Ben Horowitz is a great example of this. When Andreessen Horowitz was starting out, they said that they wanted to be a founder-friendly VC company, right?
Right.
And his contention was everywhere that I would go to raise money, the MDs would give me a hard time, or they'd be late, or they wouldn't be paying attention, or all these different things. And he said, "Look, these founders are busy, right? They're out
Right.
raising capital. They're running from VC shop to VC shop. They're trying to get their MVP ready. They're trying all the different things. They're working on growth and building a team and all these things. Is that
Hmm.
if we plan to be a founder-friendly VC company, then we have to honor their time. And so if you're late to a founder meeting, it's $10 a minute.
Boom.
It doesn't matter if you went to the bathroom. It doesn't matter if you were on a call with your top investor. Whatever it was, $10 a minute. And it was very clear at that point that this was serious, right? And
Right.
so those are the things. You have to create those incentives, the disincentives, as well as the friction, and remove the friction to make adoption real.
Brandon Turner talks a lot about that in his Better Life group. I'm not in it, but I've heard, just different things that he's been talking about related to goal setting,
Okay.
and even saying, okay, let's say you said that you were going to go to the gym 5 days a week, and you only went 4, and the consequence is you got to donate $100 to the political party you don't like.
Oh gosh.
So you're like, I really don't want to do that.
Right.
But setting up those things that, yeah, I mean, it's related to, you know, you going, I'm valuing this because number one, I'm investing my money, I'm investing my time, and honoring everyone else in the table for those types of group meetings, like you were just talking
Exactly.
about.
Absolutely.
Well, John, I know we could probably go on for another hour or so.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah. What's a good way for people to connect with you? Probably LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest way to reach me. My last name is spelled a little different, so it's Wijtenburg. And you can reach me there. I don't think there's any John Whitenbergs out there except for me.
I didn't find anything else when I searched. and then your website is
lxkgroup.com.
Group.com.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, looking forward to the next conversation.
Thanks so much, Evan. I appreciate the time.
John's insight cuts through the hustle culture noise, where growth is a craft that requires deliberate practice and leadership, process design, and team building. You can't delegate decisions until people understand the principles that they should operate from. So, create the frameworks, not just prescriptive solutions. Set the clear constraints, and then let your team's creativity fill the box. He also has some great books on Amazon. He actually just released one this summer. So please take something and put it to work. Until next time, keep it simple, Saints.